What's up, everybody? Just want to take a quick second and let people know that I am self-supported. I now put all of my episodes on Substack for paid subscribers. I put them up early, and then 24 hours later, I release them to the public on all my platforms. I also have Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, Buy Me a Coffee, Zelle, a P.O. Box, and Locals, Patreon. And all of these, all of the links are in the show notes of every single episode I put out. So look forward to continuing to, provide great conversations. And thank you all for your continued support. John, Michael, thank you so much for doing this. It's really, I'm trying to think of the words to use to describe this. It's crazy to me, we're going to talk about what's going on in Ireland, but it's all over my feed on X right now. So Michael or John, I know you're not big on X, but Michael, you're on it a lot. And I mean, it's 4 a.m. in Arizona. Let me date stamp this too. Today is April 11th, and it's 4 a.m. Pacific time when we're recording. And looking at my feed this morning, even last night, Ireland, Mick O'Keefe, some other accounts that I'm not familiar with. And the question that I want to ask to start this, something just feels off about what's going on there. And John, if you wouldn't mind, could you explain to people that might not know what is occurring in Ireland? This episode is brought to you by Vaulted, launched by McIlvaney Financial Group. The simplest and most affordable way to own physical gold and silver. Physical gold is the only asset outside of the control of the government and banking system. They can print dollars, but they can't print gold. Click on the promo link in the show notes or go to vaulted.blbvux.net/coffeeandamike.
Oh, sorry. Well, certainly, Mike. Just what do you think is off about it? What are you getting at there?
I don't know. It just. I don't want to say psyop. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but like it's just now all of a sudden it's all over my feed. Like these things aren't by accident. That it's just constantly being thrown at me right now.
No. No, that's I know that trope is out there, but the people who are putting that out, I'm not saying you're necessarily picking it up from that source, but there are certain kind of idle minds in what was once called the resistance who've done nothing about anything except backbite and snipe at other people, and they're now very active in trying to disparage anything that happens that isn't them. So that's kind of what that is, I think. What's happening is that the farmers in particular, but also hauliers and builders who are kind of different kind of sectors and different, organizations in terms of representation, union representation, or whatever you would call it, have now come out on this issue of the tax on fuels because they can no longer function because of the increase since the start of the war in Iran, or the Iran war, if we want to put it like that. And they're basically saying we can't survive. Now, there are multiple factors here. I would just signal one. One of the things is that a key point about this that isn't really being made or being heard in the whole discussion is that ultimately this is about government gouging, because it's about the excess and VAT and all the other. The war started, and the first thought of the government was to capitalise on it, the Irish government, by going along. So every cent that the diesel and petrol went up, they matched it with a cent approximately of tax, because it's something like, I think it's 50% of of the price of a litre of fuel at the pumps is actually taxation. So it's a very simple thing for them to say, well, we're actually just going to cap the fuel at the price it was, at the tax at the price at what it was when the war started. And we're just going to, obviously people have to pay more because the price of the actual fuel has gone up. They're not doing that. And yet this is concealed in a dialogue, which is now they're going up, putting out all kinds of poison, that the blockades. What's happening is the farmers have blockaded ports. They have been in the city. They have blocked Dublin. They have blockaded the city for a day. They're basically showing that they can do it. Now, this goes back. I was back in January. I went to a meeting, a massive meeting at Lone in the centre of Ireland of farmers, which is almost like a dry run for this. But it was about the Mercosur Pact, which was then going through the European Parliament and so on, and which was essentially about importing South American beef into Europe, which, because the problem being, or among the problems being, that the quality of South American beef is grossly inferior to Irish, but it would probably do serious damage to the Irish beef trade. So at that point, I was in that loan that day, and I was amazed. It struck me for the first time that whereas for the last 6 years, as I've been hinting in my previous statement, the so-called resistance in Ireland has become more and more introverted, toxic, useless, and completely, nondescript. That here, right in front of us, was actually the actual resistance. And I've been saying that for a couple of years, that the real resistance hadn't arrived yet, hadn't appeared yet. And when I looked at all these tractors, massive machines coming down the motorway, blocking the motorway, just in a kind of a tokenistic way that day, I thought this could be it. This could be our velvet revolution. And lo and behold, 3 months later, here we are. And so now it's complex. I mean, it is understandable that people would be somewhat suspicious about the farming community in the context of its organizations, which are pretty pathetic, to be honest, the Irish Farmers Association and so on, who have been basically in the pockets of the government forever. And they're not very inspiring entities, to be honest. But from my information, the people who are actually organising these blockades are not affiliated with them. And indeed, yesterday, something very bizarre happened where there was supposedly a meeting between the government and the people responsible for the blockades. And 4 representatives of the protesters went to Dublin on the train, and they were turned away by the government, who were speaking with the leaders of the associations supposedly representing the hauliers, the farmers, etc. So there's a lot of two-timing here. There's a lot of lying. I mean, the government is out lying, and they're telling people that the farmers and the protesters are blocking people going to hospital. On the contrary, there have been countless stories out about people clearing the roads to let ambulances through, and the guards, the police, actually blocking the ambulances subsequently and sending them around the houses in order to get to their destinations. This is, of course, a tactical thing that has crept into Irish culture only in the last few years, where the government basically seeks to smear citizens on the basis of things that are not untrue. Another one that's come out the last couple of days now is the Minister for Justice talking about, foreign interference in Irish affairs. And you know who's guilty? Tommy Robinson. Tommy Robinson does one tweet about something going on in Ireland in a global culture, and that's interference in Irish affairs. This is the kind of gibberish that these clowns, and clowns isn't an adequate word because they're actually very toxic, very nasty people. But this is really, but to cut to the chase, what I'm hearing from my sources on the ground is that whereas, a lot of the people involved in these protests weren't out, as it were, in 2020 or subsequently. They weren't out about the lockdowns, they weren't out about excess deaths. They weren't aware because they live in a pseudo-reality created by corrupt journalists. It's somewhat understandable, not entirely forgivable, but understandable. And they're here now, but just because they're beginning to understand, they're beginning to put things together and see the big picture. And whereas at a surface level, this is about money, it's about income, it's about their livelihoods, their capacity to survive. Yes, and those are serious matters. But they're also beginning to understand that these things are intertwined with the survival of their country, with the safety of their children, with all kinds of other things that we've been talking about for several years. So the next few days are going to be critical. If this is the Irish Velvet Revolution, which I hope and pray that it is, because we need rid of these scum that are running our country into the ground, over the cliff, then, I think it'll be a momentous day in Ireland. And it's interesting that the last week has been Easter week. That was the week of in 1916 when the revolutionaries under Porrick Pierce led began the process, which 5 years later resulted in a kind of independence. We have to say now that it wasn't total independence. We realise that now, but we kind of enjoyed it in the delusion that we had for some years that we were actually an independent nation.
Michael, before you jump in, because I want to get your thoughts on what John said, but one thing I just want to add, so let me clarify what I said at the beginning. It feels like, to me, as you've described this, is the government attempting to lure or some type of something to move things ahead to potentially lock down Ireland,
Yeah,
to set up a almost like a guinea pig for the rest of the world, being the first country to move towards this. Because I'm finding a lot of parallels right now between what's happening in 2026 versus what's happening in 2020. A lot of similarities.
yeah, yeah. Well, ultimately, Mike, in my estimation, what this is about really at its core is and to nobble the farming community so that they will be not able to produce food and to function properly, so that the food will become scarce, and this will give leverage to the corrupt governments of the West and the EU and all these entities in order to push forward then with the central bank digital currency system. So the deal will be: you want to eat? Okay, sign here. Sign over yourself and your children and your children's children and your children's children's children to us to enslave for all time. That's the deal. If you want to eat, yeah, here's a sandwich, but here, sign here first. You see? So that's what's essentially going on at the back of all this. And I think the farmers are beginning to sniff this now. They didn't, I mean, really, I've tried to talk to farmers over the years about this, and they're a bit wary of me because I'm a far right extremist, of course. But, you know, uh, they are beginning to understand it now, that this is really serious. This is terminal. This is existential. It's not just about money on a check or whatever.
Michael?
Actually, this is super interesting. I don't want to interrupt John's train of thought. I mean, I think please keep rolling because this is very important. Actually, you've got me thinking about something. I'm going to go in another room of my library and come back with a couple of books on Ireland real quick. But this is super interesting what John's saying. We got the opportunity to listen to him. Let's do it.
Well, oh, go ahead, Michael.
Go ahead.
No, I was going. Well, I
wanted to grab a couple books.
Go ahead.
Okay.
So John, so you're saying the next couple of days are critical in relation to
Yes.
that. What explain to me why it's so critical? Where are things? Where do they
Okay.
stand now?
Okay. Well, I've been talking to lots of people on the ground in the last few days, and the picture I'm picking up is that there is a dialogue going on, but internally in the protesters, they're learning on their feet. They're being educated on their feet. They're understanding all the different linkages and so on. And they realize then that they're dealing with a monster, a really an evil monster. Because, the Irish government is not just the Irish government. It's being controlled from outside by all kinds of forces, bankers, the Democratic Party of the USA and all kinds of things. There's a company called Teneo, which is orchestrating all the lie telling in right across the board of Ireland, has been doing for the last 15 years. So people are beginning to understand now on the front line what's been really going on in their country. So the more longer this goes on, the better. And people have been telling me that, yeah, this is good. This was Friday. Friday is because now we've got Saturday and Sunday, 2 free days in which people can actually expand their understanding of this. And if they stay out there, which they will, that this could really turn into something really good. At the start, the indications were that the police and the army, who had been called in by the government, were not going to do the bidding of the government. That's kind of shifted in the last 24 hours. I'm not sure that can be relied upon anymore. In fact, I think it probably can't. But that's not necessarily bad, because if they turn on these people, the farmers and the truck drivers, the people who actually feed and give, bring the food to the tables of the people, right? If they do this, then the people may very well rise up as one person, one man, one woman, and say enough. Because, compared to these guys, these farmers, they're salt of the earth guys. look at the creeps who are in office in our country, in our government, and you say there's no choice here. Now, I think therefore, the strategy seems to be now, Mike, that the government is trying to procrastinate, to slow down. That's why they cancelled the talks yesterday without telling anybody. They want to slow down because they want to get to Monday. Because on Monday, then people will be trying to get to work and trying to get their kids to school and so on. And that will, they believe, irritate people and turn them against the protesters. Now, that is the big crux of this. Will that happen or will it not? Are the population in general sufficiently awake and aware to actually respond to this in an intelligent way? I can't say. I would certainly hope, and I think there is a chance that that will happen, that they will actually still continue to support the farmers and the hauliers and the building people, workers and so on. I think that will happen. But the government, again, is playing every sly trick that it can. This is a really obnoxious government. I cannot tell you. You think, that the Democratic Party of under Biden was a pretty obnoxious government. It was. It was really not. It would certainly not win the gold for obnoxiousness if the Irish government was on the pitch. That's kind of where this stands. I have to say that I've vacillated in the last 36 hours from despair to optimism and back again, because it's hard to read, because ultimately the people who are actually at the top of this protest are unknown entities, and but they seem to have a very, very clear strategy, almost military in its kind of understanding of the paradoxes of this kind of initiative, so that they're actually, confronting the government, but they're making peace to the extent that they can with the security forces, the police and the army, and those guys, they're ordinary people as well. Like and they need to eat, and they need farmers, and they need truck drivers, and they need people to build their houses. But Ireland is in such a terrible, terrible state now that I don't think that I think people are beginning to understand that it's now or never. We've got to do this now, or we're going to be caught in a digital prison for all time, because that's really the implication of failure of the failure of this whole initiative. The government of Ireland has been appalling. Like it has for let you go back to lockdowns. I mean, yesterday the Taoiseach, the Prime Minister, was attacking the truckers, etc., and saying that people have the right to be mobile around their own country and to get about their work and their livelihoods and so on. Yeah, the same guy 6 years ago was telling people that they had to be locked down unforeseeably in their houses. Like these guys are shameless in their hypocrisy. And they think that people don't remember. I think they do remember. Look, I have despaired to some extent many times over the willingness of my own people to obey and to capitulate to these tyrants. But I'm not sure. I think that this may be the moment. I mean, I saw something this morning. I think it was there's an awful body over London. They're based in London called the Institute of Strategic Studies or some nonsense. They're actually people who just smear anybody who criticises the regime of the Irish regime. And they were saying how terrible it was that certain people are online and with fake accounts, and they're trying to insinuate that Ireland is a draconian police state. Well, I'll tell you what. If Ireland the Irish government, for example, wanted to disprove the idea that it's a draconian police state, there's one thing it could do right away, right this day, right this moment, is to release from jail 3 members of the Burke family. Enoch Burke, Martina Burke, his mother, and his sister Amy, who have been in jail. Enoch for nearly 650 days. That was the last 1,000. For the fact that he, as a teacher, refused to address a boy as they, because the boy claimed to be transitioning, or at least it was claimed on his behalf by the principal that he was transitioning. It subsequently emerged in court that the parents of this boy were unaware that any of this thing was happening. And subsequently, the Department of Education, which is the governmental body, at at the level of public
Wait, wait, wait.
service.
Hold on. So let me get this straight. So this guy's been in jail for 650 days because he
Yes.
refused to use that. And the parents didn't even know that the child was getting mutilated to change sex.
No, at the time they didn't know anything about it. It was entirely a project of the school.
That's
And
incredible.
just,
That's
yeah.
absolutely yeah.
Yes, but Michael, it's fantastic because even only the other day or yesterday, the Supreme Court declined to hear his appeal, saying that there was no merit in the case, even though two iterations of the Court of Appeal, which is a junior court underneath the Supreme Court, had given two different versions, two different accounts of themselves in respect of the fundamental issue. One iteration claimed, and this was at the very start, which initiated the whole thing, that that this had nothing to do with the fact that he had declined to obey an injunction or anything to do with his constitutional rights, because he's claiming that his religious beliefs are infringed by this, which they are, of course, at least, and many other rights as well. But the next 2 years later, or 3 years later, another iteration of the same court said that this was the central issue of the case. That's only less than a year ago. And yet this a panel of three judges speaking for the Supreme Court, allegedly. But, here's the point. I kind of should have seen this coming, because I've been aware for a long time that once this reached the Supreme Court and serious judges had to sit and make actual sentences out of their rationalization of what's happened here, that it would have been impossible for them. They couldn't possibly, because what's actually been happening is that they're just simply kicking the can down the road, and with the help of corrupt media, they've been concealing what the real core of the case is and trying to imply that it is entirely about what they call Enoch Burke's contempt. Well, his contempt consists in the fact that because he believes he was wrongly dismissed from his job, and that he had done nothing wrong, every time he got out of jail, which he did occasionally at Christmas and so on, they thought he would just go away and quietly. He has gone back to the school and he has stood outside the gate in protest about what's happened to him. He's an extraordinarily brave man, an extraordinarily, I would say, inspirational man. But they've smeared him every which way with their corrupt bought and paid for media. And now the Supreme Court has joined in. The last hope that he had of any kind of relief within the Irish system is gone. Ireland is now completely corrupt. A score of judges have spoken against this man without any one of them opening the box, which is at the centre of this case, which is that he had no right, the principal never had the right to instruct him to do what she instructed him to do.
Any government that would do something like that is illegitimate.
Yes.
I mean, just
it is a draconian government. It is absolutely a draconian government.
And they've opened the border. I've been to Ireland looking at this. What was it, 4 or 5 years ago? Masako and I went there looking at this. And because, at the time, people are like, why are you going to Ireland? I'm like, whenever I get that itch, there's always something that I need to go look at. And you could feel it. They're going for Ireland, like really going for Ireland. And as you can see now, Ireland's starting to get in the news, right?
Yeah. And it's very interesting, Michael, that the Irish government never called in the army to protect or defend their own border when it was being invaded from the northern province. By people with no legitimate right to be in Ireland whatsoever.
Nor did our government, other than to take photos. And I was there. I was all over the South. I was over our entire southern border. And when they would call in the National Guard and whatnot, it was just a photo op. I mean, I was there. I was, they weren't doing anything. Nothing.
Yeah, really.
The border remained open. Right now, arguably, the border is closed, but it's not actually, because they're just giving visas now. So you don't have the photo ops. You don't have the photo, and all the NGOs that have allowed them to invade the United States, they're still intact. They're still there. The plumbing is still completely functional, right?
Yeah.
And likewise with Europe.
Yes.
Masako and I just flew through Turkey recently on the way back from Europe, and we saw IOM, which is that's the main people invading Ireland, actually, is IOM, right? And so IOM, they always have these blue vests on that says IOM or OIM, depending on the language, and they hand out bags to the migrants, and the bags are always either blue with white letters or white with blue letters, IOM or OIM. Anyway, they were getting on the airplane there in Istanbul to Vancouver, Canada, and we made some video, and we proceeded to fly back to Asia. But I mean, what I'm getting to with that is everywhere we go, the architecture is still in place and still functional for major invasions of the United States, but they continue to go in Ireland, as you know. And once famine comes around, which is coming, I mean,
Yes, it
they've
is.
been working on famine for years. And you can see with what's happening in the Middle East now and other issues, not just the Middle East, it's other places as well. I was with Mary Lou McDonald, of course, Mary Lou, and leader of Sinn Féin at one time. What's she doing now, actually? Mary Lou McDonald.
Same as
Yeah.
worse than ever. This is interesting, Michael, because
Oh, let me
the
finish that
Sinn
real quick.
Féin, her party, which was a political wing of.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry,
Let
go
me
on.
finish that real quick. So Mary Lou McDonald and the other Irish that I was talking with whenever we were there 4 or 5 years ago, I kept saying, you could go into famine here. And they're like, oh no, we export enough food for, I can't remember, like 20 million people or something. Everybody was saying the same thing. I'm like, technically, maybe you do, maybe you don't, but you have a lot of inputs to make any food exports at all. You have fertilizer inputs and whatnot. And if those fertilizer inputs, and that was what I was always bringing up, the fertilizer, if that is interrupted, then whatever exports you've got are in peril at best, right? And now that's happening. This is exactly what I've been warning about for years, and Masako and I have been warning about it, is actually coming. Now you could actually see another famine in Ireland easily, readily. And not to mention,
Well,
not to mention the
I
United
think this
States.
is something that yeah, I think that countries, sort of, societies which live by the just-in-time principle, which is that they have 3 day supply of food, they mistake that for kind of abundance. They mistake that for like everlasting supplies. But the supplies to produce food depend on all, as you say, on things like fertilizer. It depends on fuel, all kinds of things, which are now under threat also. And so there's no concept. Uh, in a properly organized society, what's happening for the last few years would be reported assiduously by honest media, and people would have an understanding of what the forces were. They don't. They're now been living in a pseudo reality for years, and so they come out with stuff like that, which bears no resemblance to the actually on the ground reality of our cultures now in Europe and in America, where we're actually on the point of shortages at any time. And this is the point. This is what they're trying to achieve, so that they can, as you know, well, Michael, that they want to basically turn the key in their digital prison and condemn the human race to slavery, and our children and our children's children to slavery for all time. So look, Mary Lou McDonald, forget it. She did that party, like, was the political wing of the provisional IRA, which murdered people in Britain countless times, and indeed elsewhere. And
Keep in mind, Mary Lou McDonald is one of the inserts. I mean, she was clearly there to open the door of Ireland for invasion. That's why I was spending time with her, listening to her talk. She had an IQ about room temperature IQ. I mean, but, she had significant influence as well.
Yeah, well, you see, they're kind of Sinn Féin are probably the kind of government in waiting. That if this present lot, which is a combination of the two biggest parties, Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, if that, for example, in the present circumstances, were to fall into disfavour with the public, then Sinn Féin would be quote unquote the alternative. But in fact, they're worse. They're the same and yet worse, if you can understand what I mean. Like they went from literally being, the apologists for murder to being a woke party almost overnight. They got money from George Soros, and then they went off in a totally different direction, talking about feminism and LGBT and critical race theory, and accusing people of being racists and homophobes and all this kind of stuff. Almost overnight. I remember it because I was reporting about those things way back then, and I kind of rather I regret it now to some extent, but I wanted to kind of ensure that the provisional movement was included in the discussion, in the dialogue, in order to achieve the peaceful resolution that we desired. And so I would always present their point of view and be fair to them. And I thought that was enough for me to, at least earn their, not necessarily their gratitude, but at least their respect. But I remember there was a conference within a couple of weeks of the signing of the Good Friday Agreement in Dublin, in a place called the Royal Dublin Society, somewhat ironically. And I went along to that to report on it. And I kind of, if I thought about it at all, I was kind of expecting to kind of have people talk to me in a very civil manner. No, they were attacking me for what I was writing about family law courts and feminism and these issues in the Irish Times. So I was kind of suddenly had become their enemy overnight. And this is what I mean. This is a very suspect entity, Sinn Féin. Nobody knows. I mean, well, there is a very persuasive version of history to say that provisions were always an MI6 creation, and that their whole purpose was to destroy the Irish Republic, to destroy Irish nationalism, to discredit the flag, to smear it in blood. And in that, they succeeded, if I may put couple of scare quotes around that word.
Right. They've been working for at least 150 or more years to get rid of the Irish. Oh, longer than that, a couple hundred. I mean, seriously, go back to the 1840s and 1850s famines. I read 3 books on the Irish famines, by the way, because those are of particular interest for various reasons. Because the English were very good at making famines, whether it was in Bangladesh or in Africa or whatever, India. I mean, they did, Victorian famines. But when you look at these books that I found, I've got quite a lot of these, maybe more than a dozen. The Vanishing Irish, right? And it's interesting because this is, I study information more, and you can see that I've got quite a lot of these.
Michael, so who's that written by? Just for people who are listening on the audio, they can't see the video.
Oh, The Vanishing Irish is let's see, by James Fennell and Turtle Bunbury. And here's another one, The Vanishing Irish by Father Brown and edited by Robert O'Byrne. Look, I mean, I've got a bunch of these Vanishing Irish books. And
there's other ones as well. Yeah. That's right.
Here's another one. I mean, I got a big part of my library is on Ireland, actually, because something about Ireland is, you need to pay attention to what's going on with Ireland. The more I study about the world, the more I'm like, I want to know what the pulse of Ireland. So I check in often. Yeah.
You see, you've got to remember, Michael, that Ireland was the first country to rise up against the British Empire, really. And miraculously,
that didn't make it popular.
No, and if you remember also the context of the revolution of 1916 and subsequently, because it was a revolution that happened in
they rose up before that, John. You know that. When are you saying that they rose up? Yeah.
Oh no, they've risen up, but I mean successfully, right. In the sense that they managed to complete some. Now, of course, it was actually not a complete independence anyway. And in fact, we still are occupied by the city of London, even though nobody knows this. But the point, the Easter Rising of 1916 had a particular significance within Christian kind of theology and thinking, because it was based on the idea of the crucifixion and the resurrection. That you could cast yourself before in front of the empire, and they would mow you down, but you would rise up again. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, the leader of the rising, Pádraig Pearse, actually spoke in these terms and knew he went to his death on May the 3rd, 22, to an execution course. With a smile on his face, he knew that they had won in a certain sense. And this is something that these guys fear more than anything. It's the resolve of people who are prepared to die for their country, for their freedom, for their children, for their faith. These are the things they fear. They've been attacking 3 things for the last umpteen years: attacking family, nation, and belief in God.
All over the world, every country I go is the same attacks. Asia, United States, South America, same thing.
Yeah, because these are the super overweening loyalties that they can't handle. They
Hmm.
can't scare people away from fighting for these things. Your children, of course, you will not be scared if your children are scared as well before you. You will not be scared if your nation stands to be destroyed. You will not be scared if you think before standing up before God for in judgment. You will not be scared out of defending what you believe. And this is we come back here to Enoch Burke because
They
that's
don't
what his
like when we
quotes.
look at them as just like, hey, you're just a man like me. You're nothing special. Right? I mean, we're all men and women. We're not. God will be my judge. They hate
Yeah,
that idea. They hate that idea that we don't look at them as kings and queens. I
that's
just,
right.
yeah. I mean,
That's
and
right. And the family they feared because the family in traditional society was the ultimate power. It was
mm-hmm.
more powerful than the state because it was autonomous within itself. And that's something they have been working hard to destroy for decades now in Ireland, particularly dismantling the constitution, the personal fundamental rights section, which have relate to family and personal rights and abortion and so on. They've brought in murder essentially. They persuaded the Irish people to vote to disable the protection for the unborn child. They didn't just vote to bring in abortion. They disabled the protection for the unborn child, which is something that is constitutionally impossible because those rights in that part of the Constitution do not come to us by our own vote or by diktat of the government or anything like that. They're not concessions. They're absolute rights which come to us from the deity, from the Holy Trinity, as it says in the Irish Constitution, in the name of the most Holy Trinity, in whom is all authority, and to whom all things, matters of men and of states, must be referred. That's the beginning of the Constitution. And that means that we take these rights of our people and we hold them high in the sky to the Holy Trinity so that they are out of the reach of tyrants.
Right.
And that has been destroyed.
That's right. And look at
That has
Canada
been
when
destroyed.
Canada is going full Satanist. I mean, they've got the MAID program going. Not that all the Canadians are, there's a lot of incredible Canadians, but they're doing the MAID program, the medical assistance in dying. They're basically aborting people that
Yeah,
are like in their teens and 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s. I mean, they're retroactively killing people. I mean, you can have a bad knee and they'll put you to death
you
on the
can.
same day.
Well, I get. Somebody told me that you can have a headache and walk into a hospital and ask to be put down, and they'll do it.
They will. In Canada, they're very open about it. Like 100,000 people in just recent few handful of years. 100,000.
You see,
Yeah.
you see, and this is classically now where the core of this so-called liberalism has revealed itself. Because, in the debates about all of these issues, insofar as they happen, they're always presented as benefits. Oh, the right to die, the right to die or to be killed or whatever. But it's always very passively insinuated, the
Yeah.
right
The
to
right to
die.
die and the government will do it for you, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
You want it
yeah.
or not.
And so it becomes it becomes mandatory almost by osmosis because the culture then works around it so that you can imagine in the not too distant future, you know, you'll be lying in a bed and people will be looking at you as if to say, "Are you still here? Shouldn't you be on your way?" And that's what a culture can do, and it has done it in relation to abortion. It has done it in reproductive rights. The abuse of language at this industrial level has hypnotized people and made them unable to actually think. You actually think about the idea of seeing a dead baby, of 6 months gestation in a bucket. That's a human being in a bucket covered in blood. They won't let you look at that in this culture. And the very fact that they cannot look at it tells me everything. And I say that to them. If you can't look at the dead baby in the bucket, then you don't believe it's a clump of cells.
One thing.
This everything they've done has been utterly destructive in our society. Ireland, let me tell you this as well, in relation to the unspeakable creeps who now are at the top of our government. Every single one of them, without exception almost, went into politics and went through the first decades of their
Mm.
careers as so-called conservatives, talking about being pro-life and all the rest of it. Now they are the most rabid defenders of abortion in the entire Western world. They don't care about anything. They have no principles.
Yeah,
They
they
are
look
utterly
everything
bereft.
is subjective. Like everything has to this sort of Satanist thinking, nothing is just abjectly wrong, such as murder, right? They're just like, well, there's
Yeah,
gray area and well, that child. Look at what they're doing now. They're literally putting people to death in Canada for. One of the lawmakers said, "What I just saw it a few days ago." She's talking about, "Oh, they might if we don't put them to death here, they might run off to some place like Switzerland and do it." That sort of thing. I mean, it's just like zero moral
yeah,
boundaries at all. No moral boundaries. It just says this is just wrong. I mean, I'm not even going to discuss why it's wrong. It is just wrong.
yeah.
It's
Let's
just wrong.
yeah.
Period. You know,
Let's not have a debate about murder. Let's not have a
right.
debate
It's
about
just
murder. Let's just
wrong. Like Gaza, it's
yeah,
just genocide. Period. It's
yeah.
just wrong.
Well, you see, this is the way they've actually lured people into this pseudo discussion about things as if they were open questions that are absolutely unthinkable, and that's why you get what you get. You get people being put in jail without cause or without just cause, and then just left to rot there because the media manipulates public opinion and say, "Oh, well, it's just he's a contempt of court. If he purged his contempt, he could just walk free." In other words, if he admitted he was wrong, if he admitted he was a liar, he could just walk free. You
Mm.
see, they don't understand principle. They don't understand people of conscience. They have no concept of conscience, none whatsoever. This is the most dangerous thing that has happened in my country for all my lifetime. I've never dreamt that such things could happen. That you would have such creeps in power speaking the way they do, looking at people the way they do, and introducing the measures that they seek to introduce.
Exactly. I'm taking a
It's
note of that.
well, Michael, while you're taking that note, let me ask you guys both a question. I want to start with Michael because, coming back to what we started this with, and, it's perfect opportunity for me to ask because one of the questions that I have, and Michael, in all your, years of covering this in various countries and seeing these protests, I've said to myself, watching the Canadian truckers, watching what happened here in the United States, when you are going up against a machine or a system, you have, first of all, you have the brutal force that the government can use on the citizens, but you also have technology. The government has technology on their side. They can cut off GoFundMe, send go. They can cut the credit cards and starve you out that way. How can this be successful with this type of opposition? And Michael, if you wouldn't mind starting, because you've been to various countries, you were in the Netherlands with the farmers there. What do you think of that statement that I just made or that question I posed?
I mean, it's coming down to that. They already cut people off on a regular basis, right? I mean, it's like, or John was talking earlier, somebody's been in prison for 650 days for not calling somebody their approved pronoun, even when the parents didn't know the child was being mutilated to change sex. I don't know the specifics of that case, but these sorts of cases do happen regularly, which are, vetted and verified. This is, one thing that John has said a lot of important things, and a lot of them we need to just stop and talk about that one important topic because he's got so many topics he's bringing up. Like one of them that John just brought up is like a lot of people just don't understand the boundaries anymore. Like it's like they don't even know what it looks like. For instance, like Joe Rogan, let's talk about that as an example. I've had opportunities to go on his show and I won't do it, right? I'm just never going to do it. Why would I go on a show with somebody who smokes dope in front of millions of young people, right? Now, people will immediately say, don't you understand? You'll get a lot of viewers. Hey, I can do the math like everybody else. Trust me, I understand. I'm not going on a dope head show who's pushing dope to millions of people. That's wrong. That's way over the top. That's 10 miles beyond the border that I'm willing to go, right? Now, there's people's shows that I would go on, hey, I don't agree with this, I don't agree with that. But if you smoke dope in front of millions of young people, no chance, right? And that's what it looks like when you have actual borders. You just say no, right? I would never go see Elon Musk. We were at SpaceX many times in Texas. I never asked to see him. I never once even reached out. We were at SpaceX because it's right on the border with Mexico. And so we were watching invaders come in from Mexico. That's why we were there. But we were there many times. I never reached out because Joe Rogan and Elon Musk smoke dope together in front of millions of young people, right? You have to have a line where you're like, That's just too much, man. That's equivalent of taking children out and hanging them off the bridges. It's way over the top. You can't smoke dope in front of millions of young people while you're one of the biggest influencers on planet Earth. I mean, you got to say no.
What are your thoughts on
Yeah.
the whole
Agreed.
the banking, the you know, the ability for the government or the state to just starve people out that way, and they can kill these movements?
They've got the objective power to do it. You know, they can do it, and they have done it. They regularly do that. People that went to the truckers protest in Canada and whatnot, they cut them off, right? Quite a lot of them. And so they just, if you were even there in some cases, like at the January 6th or whatever, a lot of people got cut off because they were tracking phone data, right? They cut various people off instantly. They can do that with a flick of a button. And these days they can probably just do it with AI, of course. Speaking of AI, let me say something on AI. Or John wants to say something, so I'll be quiet, and then maybe I can say something on AI.
No, walk away, Mikey. Go on, continue. I wasn't. No, go on. Continue.
I was on this private chat with some interesting guys until recently. I got kicked off because I didn't carry the line on Israel doing their genocide, right? Oh no, they say you're anti-Semite, and I'm like, you're not a Semite. You're a white boy. You're a white guy. White guy call me anti-Semite. Okay, you got to get out of here, man. You know, it's not working anymore. Anyway, so one of the guys on the chat group, this is a very serious man, actually. So privately, about 3 days ago now, he sent me a link about something, and it has to do with Holocaust stuff. And anyway, so it's a Perplexity link, right? So I'm reading the Perplexity link. I'm like, first of all, it's AI. So you're going to use this as evidence in a discussion with me about something very important and historical. You're going to use AI Perplexity. You've already lost, case closed, right? But let's drill down further while we're having fun, right? I mean, Perplexity. So I read the Perplexity thing that he sends about this historical stuff in World War II. And what does it cite? Wikipedia. I'm like, there's 2 layers of you're guilty of historical malfeasance, right? So Perplexity is linking to Wikipedia. Now, the Wikipedia monkeys will say, don't you understand how Wikipedia works? It cites the actual sources. You're guilty too. Let me tell you what. So I was in Hong Kong with one of the editors of Wikipedia, right? He had username and password just like you have to your email, right? So I'm sitting with him at his house several times. He's literally editing Wikipedia right in front of me. So I said to him, I'm like, so I can literally publish an article right now, and then you can cite it in Wikipedia, and then I can use your Wikipedia citation. He's like, yeah. So in other words, I can just pull out my laptop, write an article, put it in the New York Times or whatever, and it'll be at New York Times. In fact, we could just skip past the part where I'm even involved. You could also be a journalist at anywhere in the world, any Main Street, anywhere. You could just write something there, publish it, and then cite yourself in Wikipedia. Yeah, of course. Anyway, that's Wikipedia. So when people are like, they cite the source, they don't understand how, even, you know, in school today, even not just, I mean, even adults that are well into adulthood think that Wikipedia is actually a source. And they think because it cites the sources, it cites the sources. They don't, there's just no rigor. I mean, there is rigor among a subset of people, but when you demand rigor, most people don't even know what it looks like. Same thing with morality. When you demand moral rigor, like stop going on with Joe Rogan. If you want to be taken seriously, no matter who you are, if you go on with that guy, you're selling out. You're selling out. You're getting whatever you're getting. You're getting all this readership and that sort of thing, and probably making a lot of money advertising whatever products you got, but you're doing that at the expense of you're bringing more audience to him so he can dope up our children, which is the main weapon in destroying our countries. The main weapon in destroying our countries is intoxicants, period, full stop. That's how we got rid of most of the Indians, is we got them drunk. We did it with firewater, right? We did it with firewater. And then we killed their food supply and did all kinds of other things. But one of the main weapons that WMD is, whether it's opium, cannabis, alcohol, whatever, and this has been going on for many centuries, is using these intoxicants to weaken a society, and then smoke them, right? So when you literally smoke them, I mean dead, right? And now that's what you've got. You've got this people that don't have these moral boundaries that just bring all their audience over to, and the people that are pushing the dope obviously got these major contracts and major reach because they're getting funding from the people that are destroying us. They are part of that architecture. They are not separate. They're the same thing.
That's a very good point, Michael, about the intoxicants, because it's something I noticed. I haven't had an alcoholic drink for 35 years. I realized it wasn't good for me. So I stopped. But one of the things I've noticed about 20 years ago in Ireland, like drink used to be, it's quite expensive still in the bars. Like, I don't know what it is, something ridiculous for a pint of Guinness or something. I can't, it was a long time since it was a fiver. It could be a tenner now for all I know. But what I noticed was that there was these supermarket chains like Lidl and Aldi, mostly German, had come into Ireland, and they were selling cans of lager like for €1 or 1.20 or 1.40. And people were coming out of the supermarkets with like boxes of this stuff, like, and going home and drinking at home. And of course, that damaged the bars because people stopped going to the bars. But that kind of, you see, that's one thing you have to always factor in when you start thinking about a society in the present kinds of circumstances. And then you because there's time, you could find yourself puzzling, like, why are they so blind? Why do they not notice? It's because they're out of their minds most of the time. And almost to the point of being deranged. And I think that, this is something that we need to actually start to talk about, really, because our countries are actually, this is a conscious attempt to basically numb our countries in terms of their emotions concerning.
Numb is the right word. Numb, right? Numb, yeah. and dissolve and attenuate our ability to process information. And look, yes. how Joe Rogan and whatnot solves problems. He's like, oh, the border's open. Oh, wow. That's his response. And that's why a previously high testosterone man who did a lot of, MMA or whatever. So, okay, so now what does he bring? He brings in the tough guys. He brings in SEALs and all that stuff, get on his show. So all the young guys are on there going, wow, I mean, these guys smoke dope, and that's a SEAL. That's a freaking whatever. That's Joe Rogan MMA. And they're attenuating our young studs that we need to defend our country. We need testosterone out there. You know what I mean? We need guys that'll get up and go. Most of the people I go to the border with are actually, a lot of them are women, actually. A lot of them, like Ann Vandersteel and my wife, Masako. There's a lot of men too, but a lot of women are the ones that are like, hey, we got to defend our country. It should be like every able-bodied man should be out there, right? The women should be trying to hold them back. Hold back, horsey. You know what I mean? But the men should be saying, sorry, honey, I got to go out there with the other men. We've got to defend the country.
Yeah. For sure. A lot of this stuff that you're talking about, Michael, is, a continuation of the 60s by under another banner. This kind of notion of freedom. This is, it's, get out of your head. Yeah, get out of it. That's freedom. But actually, that freedom, so-called, enables you to be plundered and abused.
They always call it freedom. They always call it freedom. All the dope, I've got a whole section in our library on intoxicants, and it's always freedom this, freedom that, freedom everything. You go to these cannabis stores in Thailand or Argentina or Colorado or wherever, California, it's always about freedom. It's just complete lie. There's no way anybody that's on intoxicants and addicted to intoxicants is free. That's absolute slave. That's like right out of 1984. It's like literally right out of 1984.
Well, you see, this is really, I think, what has left us in the situation we're in. In Ireland, we are absolutely on the cliff edge now of destruction. I think, we're within about a decade of becoming a minority in our own country, the Irish
100%.
And people don't, you're not even allowed to talk about it in public without names. Not that I care what they call me, but it's extraordinary. And this is, when you look at what's happening, this is the amazing thing that I feel about it. Like the kinds of things that we've been saying for 6 years, and particularly since the lockdowns, are now in the news. But for 5 years, they were conspiracy theories. But now they're saying, yeah, that this is going to happen. There's food shortages. Yeah, well, we were saying that 5 years ago. They're going to generate food shortages. They're talking about, rain. I mean, farmers now in Ireland. I've read reports in recent times where farmers have had to close down their businesses growing vegetables, etc., because they just can't. The weather is so bad. Has been for like 3 years. Like from about this middle of the summer of 2023, it just was a deluge. Every summer was a deluge, and it always hits in the spring, this time of year, when the farmers are starting to plant their crops. Suddenly, the skies open, and it just goes on for weeks on end, and the ground is cold. You can't plant seeds. It's just horrendous. And now Ireland used to be a food producing country, very well known all over the world. It could have become the leading, organic grower in the world if we had the right kind of government. Instead, they brought in foreign chemical industries and big tech in order to justify their own existences, because they had no ideas and no knowledge of anything. And we're now in this awful situation where, we the Irish people, like, even if you're aware, you're powerless in relation to what you can do. There's all these appalling things happening. The influx of the invasion of our country, which is like hundreds of thousands of foreigners who are no benefit to Ireland whatsoever, except a drain on everything we have. And they're destroying our culture. They're giving lip to the native people. They have no respect. They have no gratitude. And then you go in and you go into the schools, and there's nothing but pornography being pushed on children. And
That's one of the
these things,
weapon systems. That's one of the
yeah,
weapon systems is pornography. And the more you understand about all these things, the more you realize how these things dance together, like music warfare and pornography, right? It's all, when I was young and people would say, oh, pornography they're using this to destroy our country. They're using rock and roll music to destroy the country. They're using all this stuff. And of course, when you're young, you don't see what they're talking about, right? As you get older and you see a lot more things around the world, those old people were right. They were absolutely right. Like Paul Harvey level, right? When did Paul Harvey say, if I were the devil, that talk he did, remember, if I were the devil, he's basically would get everybody drinking alcohol and watching pornography and all these sorts of things, and basically would destroy families, basically would, main thing is destroy families, destroy minds. And just, if you want the Irish to actually get together and shrug this off, the first thing they have to do is got to get rid of the intoxicants. Actually, get rid of the intoxicants and get out there and get your minds clear and organize. Like get people's minds very clear. Your mind needs to be the strongest it's been in your whole life. Like if you have to take a whole season and go out and work on a farm and do nothing but work on the farm in your spare time, get your mind clear, think it through, get the guys organized, and defend the country.
Okay, well, Michael. Now that you're on this element of the discussion, I think I'd love to ask you about, and this may be a difficult thing to answer in any kind of comprehensive way, but just in general terms. I mean, this moment, I believe we're on the point of what you talk about, the possibility, if not the probability, that we will be facing gross food shortages within a few months, and that people will actually find difficulty getting food. It will become so expensive. It will be certain things will become unobtainable. Our farming industry, our tillage industry is damaged beyond repair, and so on. So how do you, like, what would you say to people in relation to the practicalities of staying alive, of keeping their children alive at this moment? Of securing the safety of their children, because that's a big issue as well. I mean, we have imported people into Ireland who have come from cannibalistic cultures. They won't be looking for food where we will be looking for it. This is the thing that worries. There are all these things that are in my mind now, watching what's been happening and what these.
The funny thing is it sounds like you're being hyperbolic, but that's not hyperbole at all. That's straight up real.
Yes.
I mean, that's very real. One of the things people could do right now is go out, get people's mind. Don't be meeting in the bar room talking about this stuff. Go out and find a local farmer and say, I want to work with you. I want to help you make this farm work and start growing stuff and get everybody's mind clear and organize each other, right? because you're going to have to defend your own country. The men are going to have to come together, and the women are absolutely vital. And you're going to have to come together as a group, as an organism, and and basically, and you're going to have to grow your own food. I mean, and that's it. And you're going to have to organize, because a single man, it doesn't matter how strong you are, you're weak, right? You have to be a team, and that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, and so you
Yes.
have to team up.
And also fuel, Michael. I mean, like obviously firewood. Yes, that's fairly straightforward. But for example, one of the most extraordinary things that's happened in Ireland in recent years is we had what was called turf industry, peat, right? Massive industry. Borden Amona was the company,
You
all over
export
the
a lot of it.
Midlands producing. And every farmer had his own bog and cut turf, sometimes by hand or by hiring a machine in, to do it. And they're trying to stop this. And in fact, Borden Amona is essentially closed down. We're now importing, this is supposedly for environmental reasons, but we're now importing briquettes, which are kind of, compacted peat dust.
When I was there, I looked into that particularly. It was amazing that you're actually importing that stuff.
Yeah. So the environmental requirement is not met in any way, because we're still burning this stuff, but we're not actually we're importing from another country and paying them for it. It's absolutely absurdity. It's absurdity beyond belief. So that's something that I think people need to go. I would say they need to go back onto the bogs. As groups of men like those truckers and farmers on the streets and in the ports at this moment, and saying, no, when the guards arrive, go away, feed your own family, heat your own house, leave us in peace. That's another thing. But I also think more than that, Michael, and this is very much your forte. I believe that we're coming to a point now where in communities there needs to be some form of local defence force formed in each community, whereby the men of the community agree to take turns to patrol and to defend their community from attack. Because we're looking at, in the very near future, we talked about this before in our discussions about the kinds of people who are coming in. I mean, people talk about men or immigrants fleeing war and persecution. Well, yeah, just the men are fleeing the war. The women are fighting the wars apparently at home, and the children. And why aren't we sending them guns, I ask? And there's no answer. So here we are in this situation where we have maybe 1 million absolutely dangerous people in our midst. They're already marauding around our towns and cities, stabbing people, breaking bottles and smashing them in the head. This happened the other day, 2 women and a man on the street. Like these things, and most of them are not reported in any way. So how is that? How can that work? Can men get together in that way and form some kind of, as I say, a local defence force to protect themselves? Because the state will not defend them, the army will not defend them, and it will attack them, and the guards will not, the police will not defend them or protect them.
That's been done all over the world for many centuries. I mean, when the people say we're just going to defend ourselves, right? I mean, that's basically what the Taliban did to us. The Taliban didn't have any overarching structure. It was just a bunch of villages out there where the guys would work together. I mean, that's all it was, really. They were, they can take a lot of punishment and they could do things. And I mean, so that's a normal form where there's no actually overarching, it's distributed. And that's what, again, that's a normal form of defense, is just everybody defending their own communities. So you have to get together and you have to make your own food. I mean, the men and women are going to have to get out there and farm, get the kids farming, get out there and get them working on farms, get their minds clear. Don't be, all those bars should be going out of business because people aren't even meeting in them. If they're going to meet anywhere, it should be out on the farm or at church or someplace where people have clear minds. You have to have a clear heart and mind to perceive what's going on, and then people get together and decide how they're going to not die, and they're going to thrive.
Yes. I think so. That's exactly right, Michael. I think that this is the moment. And what you said there earlier is very important for people to meditate on, that what I'm saying is not hyperbolic. because I understand completely how it can sound like that to a society that has been pummeled for years and years with pseudo reality constructed lies. Like this industrial lies being pumped out every day through the influence of this PR company, which is part American, mostly funded and initiated by the Clinton Foundation, which is basically running every psyop that happens in Ireland. That's a hell of a lot of psyops. Uh, and so they need to actually start to just open their minds to the possibility that things are not as they think they are, that their misgivings, their sense of repugnance about whatever it is, something their child said about what happened in school. I mean, one of the extraordinary and most awful things that I've heard about this whole school thing is that the schools actually tell their children that what happens in school stays in school. In other words, you can't tell your parents what they're teaching you. And that's the
That
first
that's
giveaway
that's that's
about
enough to take
grooming.
your child out immediately.
It is.
Right.
That's actually the first thing that the first rule of
Right.
child protection is anybody who tells you, a child, that this is a secret from your parents, that's when you go to the cops.
Or doing that child, doing the child mutilation, and then putting was it a teacher that's in jail for 650 days?
Yes.
What's the
Yes.
teacher's name? I want to look this up.
Enoch Burke. Enoch Burke.
Wait,
And his
how do you?
mother's name is His mother's name, sorry, Enoch. Yeah, is that as in the Bible?
He's a teacher,
Oh,
John.
okay.
He's a teacher, John, or he's a teacher.
Yes, he's a teacher in a secondary school, which is actually a Protestant-run secondary school. A Protestant is a school. It's run by a church, the Church of Ireland, which is absolutely shameful. And his mother, also Martina Burke, she's also now in jail. And his sister Amy, Aimee, she's in jail. They've been sentenced to jail for 2 weeks. They just happen to be in the middle of a sentence now, having been arrested last week. And again, this is for supposed contempt of court. But as I say to them, to everybody, I say contempt of court. When a court behaves contemptibly, what is the natural and reasonable response? Contempt.
Well, while you guys are talking, I'm looking at X real quick, and I see Michael O'Keefe just posted terrible scenes at the Whitegate oil refinery right now. Farmers and truckers have been penned in like cattle while the Irish army has arrived on scene to remove their vehicles. This is a sad day.
That's going on right now?
Yeah, this is a sad day for Ireland. He posted it 29 minutes ago.
Let me check one of my Irish chats here and see what they're talking about.
Derek Bly, Blighe, John.
Yes. Yeah, he's a good guy. Yeah, he's a good guy. Yeah.
The order has been given. This was 56 minutes ago. The order has been given. The protesters are under attack. It's amazing, though. My whole feed, like looking at my whole feed right now, it's nothing but Ireland.
Well, I would hope, Michael and Mike, I would hope that is the trigger that will actually awaken the Irish people. That when they see the people who produce their food and who deliver it to their doorsteps being attacked by the police and the army who are paid out of their pockets, I think that's what they need to meditate upon in this moment. And ask themselves, who is deciding this? Well, a couple of creeps, a handful of creeps in government buildings. That's who. People who have zero principles, zero conscience, zero intellect, zero love for their country, zero love for their people. Nothing to offer humanity, nothing to offer Ireland. It's time for those guys to go. And it is time for the army to learn and the police to learn that if they want to actually continue in the Ireland that we hope will endure into the future history, that they will actually now reconsider their position and turn around before it's too late. It's disgraceful. It's utterly disgraceful.
Something you want to add to that, Michael?
Well, yeah, I was just seeing some. I mean, it looks like the police are going after some, and obviously they will. I mean, there's no way that remember the police that they have in those positions are there because they will go along with it. They will go along with just invading their own country. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in those positions.
Well, yes, that's right, Michael, actually, you mentioned that. I mean, that has been an issue that we've been conscious of for the last 5 years, that police, so-called, were being bussed in from outside, and that many of them wouldn't even have Irish accents. You wouldn't hear them speaking very often. They were foreigners who were brought in to do the dirty work of the government, and they had no objection so long as the money was right. This is one of the problems of the modern world. They have tried to. You see, the police force is completely bowdlerized now. It's
Mm.
completely. They brought in. They've been advertising for Somalians and all kinds of people to join the police
Yeah.
force. People who don't even know how to spell Ireland, like it's monstrous what's happening. And as
Somebody,
soon as you say, yeah, God, sorry, Michael.
I was
Yes,
going to say, somebody in Dominican Republic called me, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago or so now. And he said that they were doing the similar in Dominican Republic. In other words, Haitians were coming because they're on the same island as Haiti, right? DR and Haiti are on the
yeah,
same island, Hispaniola. He said Haitians are actually being made into policemen in DR. He said they're doing
yeah.
all kinds of crimes and whatnot. He told me
And,
that.
and
We had
they're
a long
also
call.
talking, Michael, about augmenting the Irish Army, which is collapsing. It's down to like a
Hmm.
few thousand, and most of those are pen pushers.
Mm.
By bringing in, I've had one senior retired officer suggest a week they bring in Gurkhas, to man the army positions in the army that are vacated by the fact that Irish men no longer want to join this.
Keep in mind, if the Gurkhas were told to come after you, they would. They could hire them. I've been actually in combat with Gurkhas, by the way.
What are Gurkhas, Michael? What are Gurkhas? Not to interrupt you, but
They're Nepalese. They work for different governments, such as Singapore, British, obviously, and others. And they're very serious mercenaries. And actually, I spent a year in Nepal, so I've been with Gurkhas out there as well. But also, I went to a tracking school with them with the British military over in Brunei, and also I was with them in Afghanistan and Iraq. But the Gurkhas have a reputation of being incredible soldiers, and they are. At the end of the day, they are mercenaries too. And if they're hired to fight people out of Ireland, they'll do that. If they're hired to fight Irish, they'll do that. And they're very serious fighters.
You see, this was it. You see, ultimately, I don't know that we necessarily. I certainly didn't. At a certain level, I always thought globalism was something happened up there, and occasionally impinged on your trade and
Yeah.
commerce and so on. But it's total, isn't it? Total globalism is a totalizing force. It basically renders the land under your feet no longer yours. You can't any longer say, this is my land. I love this land. It is mine. It is my forefathers' land. It is my ancestors' land. You can't say that anymore, it
That's
seems.
the goal. The goal is to accrue so much power that nation states don't mean anything, because they are basically easy to take and control. And that's
Yeah.
what's being done right now. And enough people have gone along with it over a period of generations that the globalists of different species have incrementally gained a great deal of power. And
What?
and they're fighting each other, though. They do fight each other. Otherwise, they would have already taken over the entire globe.
Well, that's a very interesting thing that occurs to me, Michael, in the context of where we're now going with all of this digital prison thing and whatnot. That, if you remember, I think one of the big influences on the globalization of the world was kind of the reduction of airfares to allow people to travel all over the place, because it created a whole new generation of kind of yuppies, if you remember that word, who had no loyalty. They were skipping from one place to another. There was one airline which did an advert one time. It was one of the British airline. I can't remember. It might have been British Airways. They did an ad called "The Beautiful Nomads," and was celebrating the idea that these people had no particular loyalty to any place. They just went hither and thither. But here's the crunch, I think, here, because one of the objectives of the Great Reset is to reduce people traveling abroad, to stop them leaving their own countries. And
Hmm.
the more that you'll be allowed to leave once a year, for one trip, and that's it. And so this is the paradox, like that the freedom is given, is extended first, and then it's taken away. And
Give,
this is,
but that's a slave way of even thinking about it. Like, hey, please allow us to go. It's like, who are you? Freedom is you're never granted freedom. Freedom is something you
yeah,
physically take. You physically take freedom, or you don't have it. You never, if you ask for freedom, you're just a slave. You don't ask for freedom, you take it,
But
right?
Michael, I mean, yes, but in the context that this precise context, I mean, freedom is a question of money, because airfares cost money and they can regulate what you have to pay for an airfare. And okay, something like Ryanair comes in and they can drive the price of airfares down, and they did, and that was a major, in some ways, a boon for people. But now we see the kind of the other edge of the knife, and uh, so yeah, I agree with you. But you see, money is freedom, and if you live in a society where most of the work is done by AI, and you are receiving a pittance of tokens every month to allow you to buy the basic rudiments of life, of existence, you don't have very much freedom in that context. Your heart may be free in some poetic sense, or in some existential sense, or some Zen sense, but you don't have the physical freedom that your parents had, even though they were much poorer than, maybe their societies were much less progressive, as it were, than yours. So I take your point, but money is also freedom, and maybe it shouldn't be, but it is.
Americans are definitely poorer now than they were before. You look at how much people make now compared to how much they made in the past. I've got a lot of documents here on the construction of the Panama Canal, and you can see the amount of people, how much they were being paid in gold and silver. We're poor now compared to those people more than 100 years ago. I mean,
Yes.
they were throwing down some money, and they didn't have any income tax. Well, until until about 1914ish, right? When was the first income tax in the United States? About 19. It's about the same, right? And with the Fed formed
Well, it's
in
a
December
creation. It was the same
1913, right?
year as the creation of the Federal Reserve, I believe.
Yeah, that was like December 1913, as I recall. And so and then Panama Canal opened and that sort of thing all at the same time. And so all in the same time period anyway. And so, but at that time, the idea was just a little bit of tax, and next thing you know, it was used remember our Social Security cards too. For a while, the old people used to say this is going to be used to control people. These numbers, it's the mark of the beast. And the only way that they were able to sell the Social Security cards in the United States, sell the idea, was for the government. They printed on all the original Social Security cards, not for identification purposes, right? And so you can look at old Social Security cards in the United States, and they say not for identification purposes. And yet, when you go to the military, everybody knows everybody knows all these things now, right? Everybody knows their Social Security number, right? That's used as an
How
ID, but it's
how do
not for
So,
ID.
so
That's exactly what it was used for.
just to correct
Michael,
myself,
Michael,
1913 was the permanent tax. The 16th Amendment authorized a permanent federal income tax, but the first federal tax was the 1861 Act, the initial 3% tax on incomes over $800 to fund the Civil War.
Michael, how do you think this is going to roll out? This CBDC, UBI, digital biometric ID program that they're planning to roll out. Do you think it has a chance of success from their point of view? I mean, with scare quotes, very, very scary quotes.
Can before you answer that, Michael, can I throw
Yes.
something in? Because I think that they've already started it, right? And to me, in how they've started it was with these young people, not even young people, all people. Everything you do is on your phone. Everything is an app. Everything has to be scanned. You pay your bills. Everything is electronic. So they've already been conditioning people to get used to this idea of a CBDC. Sorry.
What did you say that first federal income tax was in 1860, like 3% for over $800?
1861 for over $800, and it was used to fund the Civil War, but it was later repealed. I just did a quick Google search. It was later repealed in 1872. 1862, 1864 revision increased it to 5% on higher incomes
That's
to pay for
interesting.
Civil War expenses.
If my memory is right and my mathematics, that means for people that were making over $800 a year, you said we're getting 3% tax, right? So I think that would be, I'm guessing, about 40 ounces for people that made the equivalent of about 40 ounces of gold per year, if my memory is correct on the historical price of gold. So that today would be like, Well, $200,000. So for people that were making over $200,000, it would be 3% tax. I think if my memory's right on the price of gold at that time, and the math is right in my head, that would be like a 3% tax for people making over $200,000 roughly. I'd have to check that out, but I think that's probably
Wow.
roughly accurate.
Sorry, John. I just want to throw that in, but I know you were asking Michael that question.
Okay. Yeah. Look, so just wondering, okay, like first of all, how has it a chance of success, or B, will there be an interim period when the currencies collapse, when hard metals may become come and turn into currencies, silver perhaps, I don't know. How do you see that interim period playing out? Because people are talking about the imminent collapse of the dollar, followed by the euro or the other way
Mm,
around, and
right.
ultimately that we are going to end up losing everything. I mean, there's a book called The Great Taking by David Rogers Webb, which describes that they've already put in place the legal mechanisms or to allow them to basically asset strip the entire populations of countries, and so that the house you live in that you've paid the mortgage on or paying the mortgage on you'll be now renting it from somebody that you've never heard of.
You'll own nothing to be happy. David Webb just messaged me today, actually. I mean, he's very smart. I mean, he's laid it out.
Mm.
They'll just come and take it. Because people aren't resisting to it's just incrementalism and people just distracted, going and watching sports, paying attention to everything except what's happening, being saddled up like a workhorse, basically. And because keep in mind the way that these big players look at us is literally farm animals. I've got a book here. I was just showing to. I went on today I did a podcast today with Brett Weinstein. I was showing him this book about how Greece and Bulgaria and Turkey were swapping minority populations. It's a 1932 book. I got a whole bunch of books like that, and this is my private library. I mean, it's taken me years to assemble this. This is a war library, but there's no books on guns or anything, right? And then, what I'm getting to is the swapping around populations, reducing the populations, doing genocide, democide against your own population is absolutely normal. Replacing populations. Where's that book? It's a 1932 book. Anyway, I would like to hold it up for you, but anyway, I don't want to get. Oh, here's a book that's interesting. The Hungry 40s. The Hungry 40s. This is about the famine in across the Europe in the 1840s, which of course hit Ireland as well, right? And
Mm, mm.
famine over Europe. I've got whole huge sections on famine and that sort of thing. But famine as a weapon of war. But yeah, I mean,
Yes.
this idea the Romans used to do that. The Romans used to swap populations and do demographic warfare and anthropological warfare, which is a little bit different from each other but related. And that's what's happening now. Like for instance, Ireland and many other places are being replaced. It's an old game. It's nothing new at it. There's nothing extraordinary about it. It's only extraordinary to people that don't know how this music is played. It's like they're playing
But
a violin and they know how to play the violin, and most people have never even seen a violin before, right? And they know how to do it.
But it's also like Michael, because there's a syndrome whereby people condescend to the past. They treat the past with condescension. There's a line in the man without qualities, by Robert Musil, where he says the present looks with condescension, I think, something like that, on the past, just as the present looks down upon the past, just as the past, had it come later, would be looking down upon the present. And it seems that the very fact that everybody always seems to think that they have reached some point, some plateau of sophistication and civilization that makes all the things that happened in history impossible. But
These
actually,
guys are a lot
history,
smarter back then, in
yeah,
my
yeah,
opinion. Well, yeah, here's
yeah.
that book I was talking about. Yeah.
What's
What's that
Can you
called?
read it? Is it focused?
yeah? What's it called, Michael?
Yeah.
For
This is called The Exchange of Minorities, Bulgaria, Greece, and Turkey by Stephen Lattis. It's a 1932 book. Yeah, The Exchange of Minorities. And it goes in and it lays out how it was done, a couple decades before this book came out. So it's a historical, treatment of how it happened. I haven't read the whole book. I've only read parts of it, but because this is the sort of stuff I study is the many aspects of warfare. Warfare is a very complex thing when you do it on a big level. Most people think of warfare as like, Navy SEALs and jets and things like that. And I'm like, that's the tiniest part, man. That's the sexy movie stuff. Most of
Yeah.
warfare is like currency war or intoxicants and information warfare and changing populations around in a way that people don't even know it's even happening.
Hey,
And
do you know, Michael? Do you know, Michael? In those past periods when you had all of these forces still happening, or before were already happening, did you at the same time have these kind of, what would you call them, ideological tropes or ideological weather going around the place, where people use accusations like racist or whatever to stop people actually paying attention to what's happening? Or is that actually something that is unique to our modern era? Have you any sense of
no,
what that?
there's nothing new about political correctness. I don't know what they've called it in different places around the world, but controlling of language is one of the principal. I mean, being able to control what comes out of people's mouths, no freedom of speech is old. It's old.
Yes.
And so this is basically calling things by names that they are not, right? Or inverting meaning and that sort of thing. And these are mind control techniques. A great book on this actually is called Rape of the Mind. It's a
Oh,
1956 book
Mir-
by Miro.
Mirlo. Yeah, I know
Yeah,
it. Yeah,
what a great
yeah,
book. And that's a
yeah.
book that everybody should read, but read it slowly. Read it, like, digest it. By the way, there's another good book called How to Read a Book. When did that come out? Like 1930 or something? I don't remember. But it's a great book, How to Read a Book. Al Johnson. Al Johnson's been on with you, Michael, right? So Al at one point I was with Al because we've been researching together for years on different things. And at one point, I was with him in a bunch of his books, and I'm looking at his books, and I'm like, Al knows how to actually read a book. A lot of people never been trained how to actually, like, truly study a book. And I'm looking at his books. He's got them all marked up, and the things look like, got, little page marks everywhere. But and I said to him the other day, we were on a podcast together. I said, I never mentioned it to him before. I was like, whenever you laid out your books and I could see the way you had them all marked up, I said, you must have read the book, How to Read a Book. And because I somehow got a hold of that when I was a kid. And because Catherine Austin Fitz set a bunch of papers in front of me a few months ago in Netherlands. And she said, you can speed read this. I'm like, actually, no, I can't. I don't know how to speed read because I don't speed read. I study. I'm like it takes me if I'm speed reading, it might be just an email or something, of course. But when it comes to these books, I mean, I'm not eating them like potato chips. You know what I mean? It takes me a while to digest it. And so, but what I'm getting to is when you read Rape of the Mind, and I hope people will do this, read Rape of the Mind. I'm using a Rape of the Mind technique by read Rape of the Mind. I'm telling you to do it. Do it. So read Rape of the Mind, and you will rejoice that you've done it. But read it very slowly and not on an ebook. Get a physical copy and mark it up. And you're going to learn. You're going to look around you and you're going to say, wait a minute, wait a minute.
Yeah.
And you'll become more resistant to a lot of the things because you'll see the tricks. Once you see a lot of the things, they won't work anymore.
Well, that's a very interesting thing you make. The point, I mean, I find that whenever I get asked to review a book now, they want to send me an electronic copy. And I say, I don't want an electronic copy. I can't read an electronic copy because for that reason, like when you have a book in your hand, Michael, you even before you read it, you can get a
joy.
Sense,
it's joy. Yeah.
And you have a sense of its entire configuration and how it's constructed even before you read the first sentence. And you're then augmenting your understanding of what the writer is trying to tell you. But that's something that's lost. I mean, I actually refuse to review books if people tell me they're going to send me, if publishers tell me they're going to send me an electronic copy. I said, no point. I won't read it. I can't. I shouldn't concentrate on it,
Yeah. Yeah. I don't like that. It's got to be paper.
Yeah. No, it's this amazing thing about, but what's happening now in relation to the plantation of our countries, it's covered by this. I mean, people just throw out this word racist, and half the audience immediately shuts up. Like, it's really pathetic, and we need to actually educate people that to become immune to all of these tropes and insults and smears, because ultimately they're actually depriving. I tell them they're depriving your children of a place to leave their heads down and call their home.
Yeah. Michael just pointed to that book behind him, and the preparation. I read that book, and actually Matt Smith or Doug Casey sent it to me, and I read it. That's a book worth reading, and it's basically a book that's trying to help young people find a path so that they don't have to go and get in lifelong debt for go to a useless university degree, right? And so it's a very. I read the book, and actually I've kind of lived that life that's described in the book. Actually, and just autodidact. I mean, I've taught myself. Of course, I went to school. Where's my Kenjiro statue? But that book, actually, the preparation is worth reading, especially for young people or people that have children that they don't want to poison with school. They want them to learn as much as possible. Like Matt Smith's son, he went off and did wildland firefighting and sailed around around South America and did all kinds of went to do Muay Thai in Thailand and all kinds of stuff. He's still doing the preparation, and he's learning so much more than he would ever learn in a classroom. And anyway, that's a autodidact. That's the way to go.
Yeah, well, that's but see, that brings us to the question of homeschooling, because when you consider all the things we've been talking about, the biggest problem is the indoctrination of humanity, and therefore the way to combat that is at least as a starting point is homeschooling. Which could become a massive movement in any country if people were to put become so determined to take their children out of these corrupt systems. But the problem is, Michael, is that once they create and build this digital prison, then it will become very easy for them to police everybody out into the system, back into the system, and to punish those who seek to avoid it. People talk about growing their own vegetables, for example, but I can foresee vegetable police coming around to pull up your carrots and turnips.
100%.
Because
I mean, at the end of the day, you're not going to have freedom if you don't physically protect it. That's it. You're not going to be able to beg for it and go, please don't pull up my turnips. At the end of the day, liberty is, you're going to have to fertilize the tree of liberty. There's no other way. If they're going to come and if it comes down to it's between us and them, that's what it comes down to. You don't beg for freedom. If you're begging for freedom, You're just a slave on your knee. You already lost. You have to say, no, you're not going to come get my turnips. And obviously it won't end well for a lot of people. That's just the way this goes. I mean, our ancestors have been through a lot of this, right? And it's our turn. You're either going to defend it or you're going to be a slave, or you're just going to be destroyed. Yes. I think the Irish are going to be destroyed. Actually, that's the intent. I think the intent is for the Irish to be destroyed and replaced. I think it's quite clear.
It is clear. It is clear. That is their objective. And it is the objective of the creeps politicians. That is their job. Right. That is the job they're carrying out. And they know it is. They're pretending to be doing something else, but they know perfectly well what they're doing, because it is clear. Right. When they, from time to time, for example, I start announcing that they're going to do more deportations. It turns out in the next 6 months, they will have done like about 4 deportations, and that they have no idea whether those people came back or not. Right. It's pathetic. So these people are actually carrying out, and this is, again, as you said earlier, it sounds like hyperbole. But from what we've observed,
there's no hyperbole involved. If anything, it's vastly understated. As somebody who's going around all these places and seeing it, it's hard to overstate it, actually. Yes. Like, for instance, the idea that Trump is doing mass deportations is utter nonsense. It's not happening, full stop, period.
And it was never going to happen.
No, and I was saying that from day one. I was saying from day one, if he's really going to do it, he's going to defund immediately and rip up out of the ground all the NGOs, right, that are actually still in place in places like Panama and all over the United States. He hasn't touched them. You know, he hasn't. You would be sailing ships up the Mississippi River and into all the ports in the United States, and you would be filling up those ships at Memphis or wherever with these invaders and sending them back to the countries they came from. You would have ships reverse Camp of the Saints style. He hasn't done anything. He was never going to do it, right? Let me tell you, Michael, I've been on with you many times. How many days have you seen me support President Trump? Zero, right? Zero, right? Because the fact is, if you stick with basics, if you just assess the world as it is, not the way that you want it to be, but the way that it is, that guy was a traitor from day one. I could see it. When Newt Gingrich called me up more than 10 years ago before the first election, Newt Gingrich was, of course, the former Speaker of the House. He was looking for support for Trump, and I'm like, I'm not going to vote for a Clinton, but you got to have somebody better than a Trump, right? I mean, because I'm not voting for that guy, right? I mean, anyway, so here we are. The guy is a straight up traitor. I've said it so many times before it became obvious, but we knew that way back then. Now, of course, people go, well, it's the best of the worst. You know, no, it's not. He pushed the death jab. He pushes cannabis. He's devoted the Strait of Hormuz is, I mean, look at this. I mean, literally, they're getting ready to start a draft in the United States, which they'll use to kill off. That's war slavery. That is straight up war slavery. For Israel, they'll kill off any patriots that we've got, and they'll replace our army with Haitians and everybody else, and they'll use them to genocide the United States. That's how this goes. This is nothing new, right? It's only new to people that are so busy drinking beer and watching football, they don't know anything about war. They don't know anything about it. This is what's happening. That is what's happening. Look at this so-called peace treaty or peace talks, right? Not peace treaty, but peace talk. So many people are filling up my inbox with, what do you think about the peace talks? I'm like, get out of here with that peace. Are you kidding? If you're even talking about peace talks, you have no idea what's going on. There are zero peace talks. You know, Matt and I were on a podcast yesterday with Steve Murray.
Matt Bracken.
Matt Bracken. And I said, here, if we use the proper words for what peace talks means, this is what it really translates into real language. Loading. You know, we're reloading. That's it. There's no peace talks. This is straight up World War III. This is hardcore World War III. They're getting rid of the infrastructure over there that creates fertilizer. They're getting rid of the energy infrastructure. They're literally creating famine, right? That will create HOP, human osmotic pressure, that push and pull of migration, right? To invade our countries even more, right? That's what is actually going on. There are zero peace talks going on. That's just for consumption for people that are like, well, what do you think of the peace talk? Okay, done. Okay, no peace talks. You need to really prepare and start defending what's around you, because there's not going to be any peace talk. Or they might say that there are, but I'm telling you, they're destroying the infrastructure that will be used to create the food. We're going to end up with massive famines, right? And I've been warning about this for 6 years, like probably 2,000 times, right? I mean, or more.
Yes. So, Michael, what you're saying is that what people are being told is a kind of a collateral effect of a war is actually the main purpose of the war.
Oh, right. I mean, they've been working. I've been saying over and over and over, look at what they're doing. Like the other day, I said, keep your eyes on Panama Canal, and then next day the fire under the bridge. I mean, and April 2nd, I published on Twitter, I expect an attack anytime now, possibly tonight. Boom, it happened that night, right? I mean, that so-called F-15 shoot down obviously was not an F-15 shoot down. We had troops on the ground. I published it. Boom, it happened. Just before this war even broke out, Masako and I, my wife, we were up at the Danish Strait, because I think Danish Strait's going to end up getting interrupted. So we were up there, and I said, and this was before the current phase of the war with Iran broke out, I said, Masako, I think they're going to start the attack. I think they will attack, and it will start between 22nd of February and the 3rd of March, with most likely on the 3rd of March. And so we left Danish Strait because I wanted to get back to Asia before. I didn't want to take Masako through Dubai or Qatar on the way back in case it broke out while we were there. If it was just me, I would go, but I didn't want to take Masako. So we passed through Turkey and we came back to Asia. But So again, I warned it would be between the 22nd and the 3rd of March was my estimation. It happened on the 28th of February, right? So how am I getting all these things right? Year after year after year, a long list of accuracies is because we know what they're doing. It's not because we're super intelligent even. We just know how the clock works and what the clock is doing. That's all.
What, what's
That's
going to
it.
happen now,
It's
Michael?
simple.
What's going to happen now, Michael, in relation to Iran? Trump, what will be the next move, do you think?
It'll continue. It'll just grow. It'll just grow. I think at some point you may see things like Mosul Dam get destroyed. I put on Twitter yesterday, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Mecca and Medina attacked in May, June. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Mecca and Medina attacked in Saudi Arabia. I would not be surprised to see Mosul Dam get attacked. And I don't know if it'll happen, if Mosul Dam will be attacked, but I would not be surprised. What's happening, what appears to be happening, is the 1922 synthetic countries are being dismantled. That would be I call them the 1922 synthetics because Percy, drew his maps and of Kuwait and Qatar and Bahrain and UAE and Saudi Arabia and all that, right? And he drew the maps, and those became those countries were made synthetically for routes and resources purposes. Now, likewise, Panama was created in 1903. United States created Panama in 1903, November 3rd, 1903, so we could make the Panama Canal, and we opened it in 1914. But you look at Israel, another synthetic country, formed in 1948 for the same reason. That had nothing to do with a homeland for the Jews. It had everything to do about routes and resources. The homeland for the Jews was a psyop, right? Nothing but a psyop. It was all about routes and resources, right? And so that's what you see happening now. It's a battle over routes and resources, including human resources. And some of the oligarchical systems want to reduce the global population by massive amounts so that they can control the remnant, right? And so they're working very hard to reduce the population. And the most effective tool for reducing a huge population number is food. Just knocking out, and if you want to reduce food, you take out energy, you take out nitrogenous fertilizer, you take out all kinds of, they've set the table on this. It's taken generations. They've been working on this for, did you see what, by the way, I think I sent it to you, Matthew, I'm sorry, Mike, last night, how the Team America, World Police movie from 2004, how they, had the taking out the Panama Canal and that sort of thing. You know what I mean? They're telling you what they're going to do. They're telling you in advance. Time after time after time, they radiate in these sitcoms and these cartoon films like The Simpsons and whatnot. They actually tell you what they're going to do. For most people, they're just having fun watching that. But there's a few people that are watching those going, hey, they're actually saying right here what they're going to do, right? They're going to take out the Panama Canal.
Michael, is there any authority in the world that can be trusted? Is there any cavalry that is looking askance at what is happening to the world and saying this needs fixing and we could fix it? Is there anybody left?
This is like Black Hawk Down. We're it. I mean, that's it. We're the ones. I mean, it's down to us. I mean, that's it. There's no daddy God that's going to come down and help us except for God. And we have to help ourselves, right? The governments have been captured across Europe, the United States, of course, across the world. I mean, most governments are completely captured, and those who stand up end up dead. This is a huge kayfabe. Now, there's oligarchical systems that are clearly fighting each other, and they clearly, influence and infiltrate each other. They it's not like China just infiltrates the West, and the West hasn't infiltrated China. It goes same way. It's all, everybody's infiltrating everybody, intermarrying and that sort of thing. So it's a big jungle. It's a huge jungle. But there are clearly systems that are trying to create famine and others that don't appear to be trying to create famine, but they're going to experience it too. But these oligarchical systems, like I don't see the Russians trying to create famine, but you may have noticed that some of their energy facilities have been attacked and fertilizer facilities. But I think what you can expect, what I think will happen, at least, let's see, is that more of the critical chokeholds will be choked down, like Suez, Turkish, Bosphorus, Panama. We'll see. Malacca, could be Danish Straits. That's why we were just up there recently at Danish Strait. Could be Hamburg or Rotterdam, Antwerp. Let's see.
But the fact that, for example, it sometimes seems that, Putin and Russia are looking really askance at what's happening in the West. They have an alliance potentially with China. Is it possible that at some point they might actually slap the table and say enough?
Who might slap, or are you asking
Uh,
about?
well, the Chinese and or the Russians,
I
because they
mean,
have the means to take on the Western forces, don't they? To a high degree.
to some level, I mean, they have their limits as well, but they could certainly do a lot of things. They could certainly, I mean, China's, if I were China, I would be just building my base. I would continue to build my base. I'd continue to build millions of drones and everything else. I would try to stay out of combat. I would try to stay out of combat as much as possible. Even if they hit my railway going, between Iran and Turkey and China, I would keep building my forces. And the Chinese, I think, are
Yeah.
smart enough to do that. We'll see.
That's what they typically
Yeah,
do
but
anyway,
here's the
Michael.
extraordinary thing, Michael. Sorry,
What's
Mike.
that?
No, I was going to say
Finish.
that's what China typically does. I mean, they don't put boots on the ground.
They prefer not to. They prefer, I've been to Tibet. I mean, they put some there, but one of the ways they took Tibet was they were just giving land away. That's how you got Israel filled with people from Europe as well. They give free land. That's how you got Americans coming, or that's how you got a lot of Europeans and others coming to America back in the old days. Hey, free land, take it from the Indians. And so that's the oldest game in the book right there.
Sorry, John. Go ahead.
Can I ask this, Michael? That here's the weird thing. I mean, obviously, it's a bizarre thing that you might even contemplate the idea that your savior might be Chinese or Russian. I mean, that seems so mad to begin with. But here's the extraordinary thing that we now have come after. Nearly 71 years of age, and at this stage of my life, I actually look around and realize we're the bad guys.
Yeah.
We're the really bad guys.
I was late to recognize that. And it's really a sad thing, especially as somebody who's very core American like I am. I'm still oddly patriotic. But I have come to a realization now that I never would have even entertained when I was younger. I would have thought you were insane to say the things that we know to be true now. I was born in that IMAX movie of life, I mean, America's done a lot of great things. There's no question about it. But there's an evil side. America's like one of those Hindu gods. It's got many faces. One of them is extremely generous and very, very give you a kidney. I mean, like literally. And then there's another one that'll take your kidney. And there's, you know what I mean? There's it's like these different faces of, I'm talking about the United States in particular. There's good faces and quite evil as well, unfortunately.
Yes.
And I
Yes,
always
I
saw
know.
us as the good face, and with occasional outliers of people that needed to be in jail. I didn't realize that there was a major component that was just straight up evil.
Yes. And now we're in the terrible situation that many of the good people of America latched onto Trump as some kind of savior. Hopefully, because there was no hope on the Democratic side.
Yeah,
It was absolute evil, it seemed. But now it seems like Trump is just as evil. And so now
he
these
was
people
obviously that from day one. He was
okay,
obviously
well,
that from day one. I could see through him,
I,
because you can see people that are similar to you, and you can see your opposite. He's my opposite. I can basically see him like an X-ray film up on the light board. I'm like, I can see his X-ray. I can see his skeleton, right? You know how I predict Trump so well? I've been amazingly accurate at it. And people, you can see him talking publicly about that. How do I do it? I just say, what would I do? And I pick the opposite. And it's amazingly accurate. It's a paradigm that works. I'm just like, what would I do? Okay, take the opposite. And he did it. It's like he keeps doing it. Like push the death jab, push cannabis, right? Or out, close the border, but give visas. You know what I mean? It's not really closed.
or open the White House on day one of his second presidency to invite in the guys who are going to be part of enslaving the human race if they have their way, the big tech guys. That was absolutely off the charts again in terms of people who had listened to him talk about. And this is the thing, I think people were, I mean, I was certainly in some ways misled by the idea that he did say certain things that seemed to be right. But I've always said in the beginning, he's not the kind of guy I would go on my holidays with, but he did seem to have a use, if only on the basis that he was a kind of disruptive influence on an already corrupt system.
Yeah, he never fooled me. Never fooled me. And so many people have said, you turned your back on Trump. I'm like, nope. Find it. Find it. Run off and find it. You will not find it. Use all the AI robots. You will never find it. Never happened. I saw through him from day one. I've been around too many guys like that. Especially when you go off to war and things like that, and you see things in high relief and really just stuff. At some point you're like, you got to be able to read people very quickly, right? I'm like, bad guy. That's a bad guy. What do bad guys do? Bad guys do bad guy stuff, right? I used to hunt alligators when I was a kid. I've said this. Let me say one thing. I used to hunt alligators when I was a kid, right? And I had puppies and stuff. Our family had dogs and cats. And the alligators I hunted, if I tried to treat the alligator like a puppy, well, okay, you're a special alligator. You're friendly. You're not like the other alligators. The alligator's going to bite my arm off, right? Because the gator's going to do gator stuff. That's why if I don't eat the gator, it will eat me. I used to eat a lot of them, but they would have eaten me if they got the chance, right? And Trump is the same way. That guy is just a crocodile. He will always be a crocodile. No matter what he says, that's what he is. And crocodiles do crocodile stuff, right? And what if you just go with that and go, be patient, you'll see he will show his face eventually, and you will have supported him for 5-10 years, and he'll kill us all, right? I was publishing things like that. I was publishing it. I was saying it on interviews, and now here it's happening because I stuck with basics.
Yeah,
I just stuck with basics.
I mean, it's got to be. Yeah, the great difficulty though now, Michael, is that he having taken up so many cudgels on one side of the line, that everything that he touched is now discredited. And we basically are back at the mercy of the Democratic Party in a triumphalist mode after the next election.
But John, there's no difference between the two. And this is where I think that people, I don't mean to chime in here like this, but there is no difference between them. And I mean, maybe little subtle differences, but I think now if people haven't seen it, if they hadn't seen it before, they should be able to see it now, that this is a uniparty. And this is what I try to point out in regards to the midterms, because, people like midterms. And, if the Democrats take back the House and the Senate, they're not going to do anything to stop this. And if people really think that, I don't see it. They're not going to stop this.
No.
Neither one is.
It's not even a uniparty. It's like a global party, because I see it. Let me say one thing. Like, I was in the Netherlands, right, going down the road. This is a couple of years, 3 years ago, maybe something like that. And there's a sign, BBB, Boerenburgerbeweging, if I said it right in Dutch. It means farmers movement, right? Farmers people's movement, right? And so, something like that. I don't speak Dutch, but I speak German. It's somewhat similar. Anyway, but the point is, it said BBB, and it was in green. So I only need like 3 seconds to go, Boerenburgerbeweging, BBB. Who is that? I asked. I was with a political guy driving down the road in his car. And he goes, that's a political party. And I said, well, that's World Economic Forum. And he goes, yeah, exactly. But a lot of the Dutch don't see through that. It took me like 3 seconds. They're telling you who they are. The Boerenburgerbeweging, build back better. It's BBB on the signs, written in green. Green would be red. They're telling you who they are. And I just kept saying it on interviews over there in Netherlands, like, it's look at the bones. You know what I mean? Where's Monty Python, with the killer rabbit? And, some of the Dutch farmers are like, no, Caroline van der Plas, she was the one in charge of BBB. She's, I've met her, I've seen it. One of the farmers told me that she's really good. And then they won a lot of seats in the election. And sure enough, they came out and they were taking even more stuff from the farmers. The trick works every time. That's why they don't stop.
Well, I also think too.
But okay, Mike.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, John.
No, you go ahead.
No. Well, also I think too. And Michael, our mutual friend Matt Smith, he's posed this question to me. He's coming back on this week to talk further about this, but. What was 2020 all about? What was COVID really all about? And I had lost sight of this. I mean, in fairness, and I got caught up in the 24 election and what have you with everything going on. But, 2020, what was that really all about? What was the lockdowns about? What was the Operation Warp Speed about? Right? Taking civil liberties away from people, taking people's ability to make a living away, snitching on neighbors, shaming you if you wanted to go see your grandparents. I mean, I didn't get a chance to go see my grandmother before she passed away. Taking your ability away to move, to travel. I mean, this is where we're at again.
Yeah.
I think they thought they would create famine back then, but we somehow the global organism sort of was a little bit more resilient than they expected. Because I think that they actually thought that we would, because I thought there was a high chance we would go into famine back then. But somehow we skirted around that, and they were destroying, all kinds of things. And that's what they continued to do it. Later did Nord Stream and Groningen gas field. And since that time, they've destroyed a lot of fertilizer capacity with burning down plants and all kinds of, chicken farms, so many different things, right? Culling chickens, culling this, culling that, even fish at times. So I think that they thought that they would put us into famine, but it didn't quite work out. But in any case, they're still at it.
Why do you think
that's the question I want to ask now, Michael, about this. Because do you think, it seems to me, just thinking this through, that, they've got away with the excess deaths to some extent so far. The famine thing, they're creating this almost organic sense of it. And so to the extent that people are not tuning into alternative modes of information, then they're going to buy into it maybe as an organic phenomenon. But given the project that they've given themselves, which seems to be to basically eliminate maybe 80 to 85% of the human race, there's got to be a time when this all comes visible, even to the stupidest among us. And what then happens? Is that when the boot comes down on every face? Like, is that going to be what it's about ultimately? And at what point do you think that's likely to happen?
It's happening right now, but it just is not, but it's picking up steam as well. As you can see, there's already, like the teacher you're talking about that's been in prison for 650 days. That's the boot on the face right there.
Yeah.
And there's many boots on the face. And so, it's just picking up. It's becoming more and more draconian. Clearly, the invasion into Ireland is about killing off the Irish. Let's just skip past all the, maybe we can vote our way out of this part. No, you either defend yourself or you're going to be killed. Straight up. And they might save a few Irish and keep them in a zoo or something, right? This is what, probably get a bunch of drunk Irish and give them bottles of vodka. So when you bring them through and show these are the people that were here before is what they'll do, right? I'm not saying that hyperbolically. There's people that would probably actually do things like that, like keep some people in a zoo. I've never seen that happen before, but it's the kind of thing that these evil people that are doing this would do. They're straight up. This is hardcore evil that we're facing here. This isn't just people that are greedy and want to get more power and stuff. These are people that run Epstein Island. These are people that murder children. Child rape is just normal for these people. Death jabs, genocide in Gaza, celebrating, jumping up and down like it's a big party when a family gets killed. Rocketing children, hitting schools in Iran and things like that. Just destroying, hitting schools and hospitals, just like targeting schools, obviously targeting schools, right? And now they're doing a genocide in Lebanon. And Ireland stood up to Israel, and Netanyahu straight up threatened Ireland. He'll absolutely celebrate any death to Irish people. Absolutely, that's how they roll.
The Lebanese. I'm glad you brought that up, Michael. And you guys probably don't even know this. My father was 100% Lebanese, and my grandfather was born there. And I was born in Ohio in the United States. But to see what's occurring in Beirut and Lebanon right now is just it's just very, very, very sad. And
they want to do another genocide. They literally kicked off. Yeah, but how many Americans have actually met a Lebanese or an Iranian person that they really want to kill? I've met a lot of Lebanese. I've met a lot of Iranians. I've never met one that I thought, hey, we should kill these people. I've never actually met. On TV, it makes it look like we should be at war with them. But when you meet them, you're like, these are pleasant people, actually. I mean, I've met a lot of Iranian. A lot of them have come through the Darien Gap, actually, a huge amount. And who's helping them come through the Darien Gap? Highest Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society. Literally, Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society is helping invade the United States with millions of people that they're killing back in their homelands.
Just one question about that, Michael. What you mentioned that IO? What is the company that is
IOM, the International Organization for Migration.
Who is behind them?
That's United Nations. The number one funder of the United Nations is the United States.
Right. So this is everything is this people trafficking. There's absolutely nothing compassionate about this. Nothing, because people need to hear this. I think that it's not a compassionate mission. It's not altruistic in any shape or form. It's orchestrated warfare.
Yeah. Oh, Masako just walked in, handed me something. Thank you, Masako. And
that's your producer, isn't it, Michael? That's your producer and your bodyguard.
Guillermo right there. That's the reason I'm wearing a coat instead of my poncho.
My producer just giving me a note as well.
I prefer my poncho. Masako, long-haired Guillermo prefers my coat.
She turned you corporate. She turned you corporate, Michael.
She made me corporate.
Yeah. Yes. Okay.
Just like your poncho is very pleasant, but hands me the jacket.
Well, guys, we've been talking for 2 hours now. Any last things or you guys want to end with? Or any other questions, John?
Listening to John, we should do this more, like every couple months or so. We should do it more often because some of the stuff John was talking about is super important. And
likewise, Michael. I mean, your experience in all of this area and your grasp of it is amazing. And I think the world desperately needs to hear you speak. Everybody needs to hear Michael Young describe what's actually going on in the world. And so I'd be happy to do that anytime, Michael.
Let's do it.
And I'm always willing to host. So, you guys always have if you want to talk, just John, message me like you did before, Michael, and I'm always game. Get up at 3 a.m. to do this conversation.
Better and better. Mike, people are constantly sending me links to your show. Do you know Mike Ferris? Somewhat.
I appreciate that.
We message about 10 times a week.
Michael, where can people find you?
I'm on X, but I'm on Substack, actually. Substack is the best place. Substack.
John?
Same. I'm on Substack. It's great. John Waters Unchained. And I'm on X, but I don't really do much on it. But I'm also on YouTube. I have a new channel there, which I just do interviews on. Of my own. It's called John Waters Unchained as well. And you can find it there on YouTube. So that's where I am.
For those that are watching or listening, if you're not familiar with Michael or John's work, please subscribe to them, support them financially, what they're doing. It's very important to get this information out. And I encourage everybody to do that, become paid subscribers on their Substack. For people that are going to watch this, I put these conversations up early for my paid subscribers. So if you like what I'm doing, want to support my work and have the financial means, please consider becoming a paid subscriber on my Substack. And then people that watch this on YouTube, Rumble, listen on audio, I read the comments, as painful as a lot of them are. So comment, like, share, and both of you guys, thank you so much. And I'm sure it won't be too long before we talk again.
Thank you all. Y'all have a good night.
Mic drop.
Thank you.